Hello, welcome to Wellbeing. I'm Graham Wilson. Food labelling is something that we all see when we go to the supermarket, but it actually has a fascinating history. Food was often sold loose or even adulterated, perhaps with unsafe additives, but as packaged foods became more common, governments stepped in with the first pure food laws early in the 1900s, believe it or not. And over time, ingredient lists and nutrition panels have been added, like the star rating. And by the 1990s, clear, standardized labels have become the norm. Today, food labeling is all about transparency, safety, and helping us make informed choices. Or is it? Labels perhaps don't give us all we need to know, and there's a new study commissioned by Bellamy's Organic that has found that food labeling can be a major blind spot in Australian parenting. Parents sometimes unknowingly buy products that they think are healthy for their kids, but in reality they're packed with all kinds of wrong stuff, added sugars, salts, and some less than ideal ingredients or additives. Our guest today is paediatric nutritionist Mandy Sacher, one of Australia's leading experts on children's nutrition and the founder of Wholesome Child. She even has recently published a cookbook by that name, Wholesome Child. She's worked with families across the country to help make better food choices and understand what's really inside those packets that we buy. Mandy, thanks for joining us on Wellbeing.
Thank you for having me here today.
You're a paediatric nutritionist. That's a specialised area of nutrition. Can you just explain a little bit of your background and why you came to look at that as a specialty?
Yes, absolutely. And it is quite specialised. And I was given an opportunity back in the beginning of 2000 to help co-create one of the world's largest childhood obesity treatment and prevention programs. So I helped to create this in the UK with my brother, who's got his PhD in dietetics, and we worked at the Great Ormond Street Hospital and the Institute of Child Health in London, where I wrote a 250,000-word Train the Trainers manual for this program to help families, mainly from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, to prevent and to treat childhood obesity. Part of that involved me going into Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Waitrose, and those are the major supermarkets in the UK, and identifying every single product that either fit into our program or didn't. Prior to this, my training had been in adult nutrition and health, so this is when I really started focusing on children's nutrition and assessing whether food products were good for health or not. After that, I came back to Australia and I had my own children, and I realized there was a huge gap amongst new parents in figuring out what to feed their babies for the first time. And as my children grew, I realized the gaps are huge. And when it comes to children's nutrition, there's a lot of misleading marketing, a lot of confusing information out there. And that was when I wrote my first book. And since then, I have been advocating for more transparency and regulations when it comes to packaging and marketing. And I have founded the Real Food Rating, which is one of the most progressive food rating systems. And there's a lot of information available to families because I'm a strong believer that we need more nutritional literacy and education. And I have an app coming out in January which will help families make more informed decisions when they are shopping.
Oh, great. Okay. Now, the study suggested that many Australian parents are being misled by the food labels. Do you know what exactly was uncovered?
What it uncovered was that a lot of parents, the Bellamy's research shows that 67% of parents felt very confident in the choices that they were making for their families, but on further discovery, only 14% truly understood what that meant or what was in the food that they were offering to their children. So what the Bellamy's organic research shows us is that there's a huge gap between what parents think they understand and what they actually do understand. So there's a big gap between intention and practice.
How much of the confusion is coming from the marketing terms like natural or no added sugar or whole grain, those kind of terms, and the 5-star rating?
Most of the main issue here is that these days, a lot of parents have good intentions. They want to feed their children healthy, nourishing foods, but because of lack of regulations, misleading marketing, they are being sold what I see as a lie. With all of these marketing claims on front of packaging labels like no added sugar, no preservatives, 4 or 5 health star rating, it's very hard for parents to make informed decisions where there's so much confusion.
Governments have stepped in, obviously, so that we have these ratings and the listing of ingredients. So what role do the food companies play in creating the confusion?
The food companies find loopholes in a lot of our regulations. And for example, the health star rating was created with good intent. Unfortunately, food industry was part of the creation of the algorithm. So working out how foods will get high health star ratings. And within all of these tools, there are loopholes that manufacturers can get around. So, and that is even the word organic, for example, in Australia, it's very easy to put the word organic on a product and it may only contain an organic ingredient, but it's not an organic product. And it may have some additives and other things that people who are attracted to the word organic, for example, may look for. It's very confusing. And what I say is that, for example, the health star rating, it's used as a marketing tool rather than a public health tool by manufacturers.
What are the specific nutrients or ingredients that parents should always look out for in terms of avoiding?
So there are some, big offenders, I'd say, like artificial colors is a big one, nitrates, nitrites, which we found in processed meats. But for a lot of parents, this becomes very confusing because a lot of these names, you need a science degree to figure out what they are. There's a lot of numbers that don't even have names next to them. So my advice generally to parents is to keep it simple. Let's not trust what we see on the front of label packaging, right? So flip it around and read the ingredient list. If it's short and if there are recognizable names with ingredients that you'd have in your pantry or in your fridge and that you recognize as food, that means it's a good product. When you see a muesli bar or, let's say, a kid's wrap with 20 ingredients or more, and maybe a third of those you don't understand what they are, that's indicative of an ultra-processed product, and I'd suggest putting it back on the shelf. Short ingredient lists with recognizable names are the gold standard.
What are the long-term effects of the hidden ingredients that you've been describing on children's health?
Yeah, so there's a lot of emerging research, big cohort studies. We've had one of the biggest nutrition studies and BMJ review, which has showed that there's more than 32 adverse health side effects of eating ultra-processed foods. And one of these is a 25% likely increase in ADHD-like symptoms. We are seeing an increase in depression, anxiety, increase in mortality, cardiovascular risk, certain types of cancers. The list goes on. And for young children, generally what we are seeing is mood, behavior, attention, gut disruption, which again affects how we think and feel. And it can exacerbate allergies, for example, sulfur dioxide, which is in a lot of products. If a child has a likelihood of asthma or asthma-like symptoms, it can trigger those. And one of the things I'd love to point out is that a lot of people say, but, there's studies showing that at certain amounts, in food amounts, these are actually generally regarded as safe because that's how we, Fazan's recognizes additives and they do get a generally regarded as safe allocation, and then they get the amount that you can have per kilogram of body weight per day. So there are those structures in place. But what is missing is long-term studies on children who are vulnerable, their bodies, their brains, they're at a vulnerable stage of life. We don't have studies showing what the cumulative and synergistic effects are. So what I'm saying by that is they are eating all of these products over a day. And if you look at an Aussie kid's diet, the bread, the jam, the cheese, the yogurt, the muesli bars, the wraps, we are seeing this accumulation of all of these additives, and there's no long-term studies showing us what this looks like when they're eating it throughout the day and all of these chemicals and additives are combining. So we almost like our kids are guinea pigs because there are new additives, new chemicals coming out all the time, and it's impossible for rigorous studies to be done on all of these additives and to know exactly what the impacts and the effects are. We do have research about some of them, which is causing nutritionists and dietitians and public health experts to be sharing warnings of trying to reduce these types of foods, but the long-term research is just not there. And saying that they generally regarded as safe generally is not good enough, because what we'd like to see in a child's diet are ingredients that have a positive effect on health, not ones that may carry warnings in other countries or banned in other countries, yet we're being told, well, they're safe in certain amounts.
Yes, it's like a little bit of poison isn't going to do you much harm. But, the definition is it's poisonous, so why have any of it?
Exactly. And, if we have it occasionally, so if it's in your discretionary food, so for example, if these additives were only showing up in cakes and lollies sometimes, but the issue is that they are in all of our foods, right? So in our staples, in our breads, in our wraps, in the foods that we consume on a daily basis that go into lunch boxes on a daily basis. So when these ultra-processed foods start hijacking our food chain and replacing nourishing whole foods, we know that we have a public health crisis on our hands.
You mentioned ADHD. Do you know about the link between that and diet? I mean, can we see how diet actually affects a condition like that? It's affecting a child's attention and their hyperactivity, so they can't concentrate on things. In school, their attention is diverted all the time. They can't sit still and pay attention.
Well, we have to think about food as food is not how should I word this? Food is not a magic pill. It can't cure everything, but we are given a set of genes. We have dispositions to certain illnesses, certain conditions. But what food does, it gives us an opportunity to be the optimal, to attain an optimal level of, living within our certain genetic makeup. So what I'm trying to say is if we have a predisposition for, ADHD or some kind of illness, when we really work on our diets, we can overcome a lot of the symptoms and be the best version of ourselves. When we have a very poor diet, we may, attract all of the symptoms that are attributed to that particular illness or chronic disease. So nutrition is the foundation of everything. When we get that right, we can generally be the best version of ourselves. So with children, if they are being fed a diet that is full of colorings, flavorings, and additives, studies are showing us that it can affect their behavior, their mood, their concentration, and we've seen the connection between the gut and the brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. So in the EU, for example, when products contain food colorings, specific food colorings, it actually has to carry a warning label on that product that says may affect attention and hyperactivity, something to those lines. So governments are taking this really seriously. The research is showing us that they do affect children, and a recent study just showed us that ultra-processed foods can increase these ADHD-like symptoms by 25% in children.
How early in life does food choice start to shape a child's eating habits? Well,
I've actually just written a book with Murdoch Books. It's coming out in March, and I've been obviously working with Bellamy's on this research to share it with a lot of parents. And one of the things that we've been looking into is the first 1,000 days of life and the impact that has on babies and on toddlers. So I've always said that you need to feed babies right from the start, because you are setting them up with lifelong eating behaviors. if a baby is exposed to ultra-processed foods from those early days, that's the type of food that they're going to prefer over homemade, fresh, nourishing, fruit, vegetables, quality proteins. These first tastes of food are so vitally important. But one of the key issues is that we need the whole family to be informed. I often say with my real food rating, one of the things that I have on my website is the real food reset. And I usually say that when a family is, or when somebody's about to have a baby, it's a perfect opportunity for that real food reset, because your baby is going to learn how to eat from the adults around them. So it's a perfect opportunity for everybody to look at their eating behaviors, and even from those early days to start eating the same foods together as a family. And this is the best way to give a child the best start in life, and also to prevent chronic and acute illnesses later on.
So definitely parents' own eating habits are going to influence what their children prefer.
Absolutely. Children learn through role modeling, and it's a good opportunity for everyone to take stock of what they're eating. And, again, studies show us that in those first 1,000 days, the nutrients that our children are getting or not getting have a huge impact on their overall health and well-being going forward. Taste preferences are shaped, and unfortunately, a lot of food is manufactured specifically to hijack children's taste buds. So to get them addicted and hooked to the sugars, to the umami flavors, the MSG, and all of the kind of additives that are used in processed foods that unfortunately parents just cannot mimic in the home, and children tend to prefer over homemade foods.
Our guest today on Wellbeing is paediatric nutritionist Mandy Sacher, one of Australia's leading experts on children's nutrition and the founder of Wholesome Child. Mandy, school lunchboxes, let's peer into those for a second, because that's very revealing about what parents believe is good for their children.
So, when we look at school lunchboxes, unfortunately, what you may see is a lot of packaged foods, and it's because parents are very time poor, and it does take time to put together a lunchbox. But the other thing is it's peer pressure. If this kid's got you've got a packet of Oreos or Twisties, then other kids want to have the same things. And we have seen in the media, there's a lot of discussion around when schools become too strict and try to enforce what's in the school lunchboxes, to when there's absolutely no rules. And the issue that we have in Australia is that our Australian dietary guidelines, which underpin the education that is given to teachers and school canteens about nutrition, is so outdated. It's based on 2013 Australian dietary guidelines. We need a huge overhaul of the entire system so that nutritional literacy amongst parents is improved, and so parents really understand what they're sending to school. And a place that does this very well, for example, is places like Chile, where they've actually got warning signs on foods if it's high in sugar, if it's high in fat. Parents are putting into school lunchboxes snack products that have high health star ratings, thinking they are healthy, when in fact they are real ultra-processed foods. So there's a shared responsibility between looking at what are our nutrition public health tools in this country, and we've got the health star rating, which I have been speaking out against very vocally, because I believe it's misleading parents into making poor choices, and it needs to be completely overhauled. But we also have to look at Australian dietary guidelines, which haven't been updated since 2013. And we need to look at school canteens, which are promoting the wrong types of foods to parents and to children as well. And then we need to look at manufacturers who are putting, colorful characters and making all of these outlandish claims on these children's food products, which essentially they should be removed from the school lunchbox aisle in supermarkets and put into the confectionery aisle. So there's a lot of factors that are influencing the types of foods that are being sent to school. And we really need stricter regulations and governments to step in. We need our Australian dietary guidelines to be updated. We need a public health tool that's going to help parents to make informed decisions, because the health star rating's not helping. And we need improved nutritional literacy. I believe nutritional literacy should be part of the school curriculum so that children are understanding what the impact food has on their diets as well.
How can we encourage kids to prefer whole, real foods over packaged snacks that look so attractive?
I think it's kind of looking at what the syllabus is. There've been times, for example, when a child has a maths class and Skittles or M&Ms or, lollies are brought in, or pizza is brought in to teach them about maths and factors and counting. We need to integrate these whole food principles into all the subjects through school and make eating healthy, nutritious meals the norm, and keeping discretionary foods as the sometimes foods, and, letting children really understand the impact how these foods make them feel. So we have, at this stage, we have Halloween coming up, and I've spoken, I was on the Today Show speaking about, using this as a science experiment. If you've got children that are going to be going out trick-or-treating, eating copious amounts of lollies, instead of the guilt, instead of trying to banish them from doing that and potentially having fights in the home, let them go out. But when they come back, really use it as a learning opportunity. See how they behave. Are they having meltdowns? Do they feel moody that night? Are they sleepless? Restless in bed? Do they have tummy aches? And use that as a teaching moment that, this type of food, this is how it makes us feel. But when we eat these types of foods, look at the energy and how alive we feel. And so it really needs to be kind of like, children understanding how they feel with certain types of foods, and always keeping it in a positive frame. But there has to be some understanding of the types of foods that fuel us and the types of foods we eat for fun occasionally.
Do you find that parents have even thought of this idea that their children's bad behaviour is being caused by what they're eating, or are they oblivious to it?
I think there's a lot more awareness around the impacts of food and behaviour. I often do find in a family you have one parent that really believes in it and is very concerned, and then another parent who may say, it's bollocks, I don't believe in any of this, it's just let them be kids and eat kiddies' food, which is why I think like birthday parties and Halloween are a good opportunity to use it as a kind of, observe the truth. But I still think, though, there is this idea of, they're kids, let them eat kids' food. And the truth is that this kiddie type food, I don't want to be a scaremongerer, but it's really, really impacting our children's behavior. It does impact their mood. It does impact their concentration, their performance at school. And, I think awareness is growing, but I still think we need to be advocating for change.
Let's go back to the lunchbox quickly. What are some of the healthy alternatives, the swaps parents can make today if they're listening to this and thinking, well, what do I put in instead of, that packaged food?
Well, what I would say, the good news is that small swaps can really make a big difference. And if a parent is listening to this and they're sending their children to school with a sandwich, yogurt, muesli bar, I'm not saying that you can't send those types of foods. You can send a sandwich to school, but what we need to do is swap maybe the white bread or the processed bread for good quality bread. Instead of using a margarine spread, use a good quality unsalted butter. Instead of putting ham on the sandwich, use leftover, roast chicken that you've made yourself and, mix it with mayonnaise and put it on the sandwich with some lettuce. If you are sending squeezy yogurts to school, look for one that doesn't have all the added sugars. If you are sending a muesli bar, at the supermarket, on the shelf, you will find better quality muesli bars. And these are all listed on my website, realfoodrating.com. So all of these healthier swaps I share with parents on social media, Mandy_Sacher, or on my website, realfoodrating.com, because I'm trying to show parents that these swaps do exist. You just need to know how to read the nutrition label. So, for example, taking popcorn to school, but instead of taking the cheesy flavored popcorns, do the lightly salted popcorn. If you are sending crackers to school, instead of sending the flavored crackers, again, the lightly salted or the whole grain crackers. So, plenty of vegetables. I always say to parents, even if they're not eating them, always send veggie sticks, vegetables on the sandwich, a little homemade salad if you can. Parents might turn up their nose and say, oh, but kids don't eat that. But if you start to send it day after day, they will eat it, because children need to eat, a minimum of 5 serves of vegetables per day. And recent stats have shown us that only 1 in 16 children are eating the recommended amount of vegetables. So get the vegetables in the lunchbox. If they do want some packaged snacks, make sure that makes up a small part of their lunchbox, and choose the healthier options like the seaweed, the crackers, a good quality fruit strap that's only got 100% fruit, rather than one with the glucose syrup and all the additives. We can make those small, simple swaps. Lunchboxes don't have to be fancy. But another suggestion that I share with parents, instead of sandwiches, think about sending leftovers to school. So if you've had bolognese for dinner, put it in a thermos and send it to school. If you've had, a stew, or even if you've made a homemade pizza, or, I have a lot of recipes for homemade chicken nuggets or fish fingers on my website. If there's leftovers, send that in a thermos to school the next day. Children need nourishing meals, and it doesn't always have to be a sandwich.
Your key message, Mandy, for parents who feel overwhelmed that it's all too hard for them to work out, they're not going to make a change, it's just all too hard. What would you tell them?
I would say keep it simple. Go back to basics. Fresh fruit, veggies, quality proteins. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you are going to buy store-bought ingredients, flip the pack over, look for organic certified wherever possible, or make sure that the ingredient lists are very short and recognizable. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, just choose 1 or 2 things that you want to change at a time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Focus on what your child's eating the most. So, for example, if they're having a yogurt every day, look at that yogurt. Is there a better option on the supermarket shelf? And make 1 swap a week.
Thanks, Mandy. I really appreciate you coming on the program today.
Thank you.
Paediatric nutritionist Mandy Sacher, one of Australia's leading experts on children's nutrition and the founder of Wholesome Child. You can find more on the website realfoodrating.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Graham Wilson, and all of us at Wellbeing wish you well.